ultimately constantly protecting ourselves is going to isolate us. Oftentimes, this self-protection mechanism is actually more hurtful than it is helpful. That's why we want to become more aware of it and learn what our self-protection mechanisms are and be honest about whether they're actually serving us. Welcome back to The Loving Revolutionary. My name is Taya, and today we are talking about projection. Projection is one of those things that so many of us do, in fact probably all of us do to a certain degree, and it can be super detrimental, but at least it's normal and everybody does it. So there's no need for us to be shameful about it or angry at each other for it. It is just something we all need to take responsibility for, learn about and accept and recognize and support each other in understanding and forgiving. So what is this interesting little word of projection? Projection makes me think of like a projector. And what does a projector do? It puts an image on a screen, but the image comes from the projector itself, not the wall which it is projecting on. And similarly, this is exactly how projection works. Projection is when you as a person are a projector and you put an image onto the wall or another person, meaning that you attribute certain qualities to another person which are not true, because that is the negative aspect of projection, and those attributes could be either positive or negative. And what I mean by that is you could project the image of someone being your future husband when in reality they aren't actually aligned with that identity themselves, but you really want them to be your husband. So you project the image of this is husband material onto them. And projection can also be negative, where you think a person is judging you and you project this image of them as judgmental or mean or rude, when in reality they're just trying to give you some positive feedback because they love you. It could either be something you feel is good for you or something you feel is bad for you. But at the end of the day, projection is not truthful and hurts us, which is why we want to become more aware of it and learn to recognize it, so we stop hurting our own relationships by projecting negativity onto them, and we stop hurting ourselves by convincing ourselves that reality is different than it is because we want it to be. So projections are often based off of different beliefs that we have acquired either through childhood, through our parents, our experiences, teachers, and society. It is a self-protection mechanism because as humans we develop a certain way of viewing the world so that we can act more precisely and in better ways for ourselves. But oftentimes this self-protection mechanism is actually more hurtful than it is helpful. So that's why we kind of want to become more aware of it and learn what our self-protection mechanisms are and be honest about whether they're actually serving us and who we want to be and how we want to live. Because protecting ourselves isn't necessarily what's going to lead us to have the most fulfilling relationships or meet our goals or follow our desires. For example, a very common self-protection mechanism is an avoidant attachment style, which basically is an attachment style or a romantic attachment style where you choose to distance yourself when people become very loving or when they appear to be needy. And this happens because an avoidant person was taught that their needs will not be met. So they stop having needs and they stop putting themselves in a position where they are reminded that their needs aren't important. But the fact is that there are plenty of people who want to meet these needs and will. But instead of believing that, they are so afraid of being hurt again, that they put themselves in a position where they don't get hurt. And this will lead them to not have as meaningful and deep of connections, and rather they just keep them stuck in this isolated and non-vulnerable way of being. Projection is basically a game that we play in our own minds all the time. It's ultimately there to try to help us to understand and navigate the world. But sometimes we can become too stuck in our heads instead of truly connecting to the people that we are in relationships with, whether that is romantic, friendship, or work relationship, whatever. Projection can happen in any situation. And the fact of the matter is that even if your mind and your beliefs are valid, they are never the same as anybody else's. So because of that, 100% of your projections can never ever be true. You are not an unbiased and perfect person. We are all here with flaws and our own experiences and our own beliefs. And there's nothing shameful about that. That is what makes the world beautiful and colorful and sometimes dramatic. But drama is also a part of experience and allows us to grow. It's just a part of the experience. And to improve this experience for ourselves, all we can do is become more accepting, more understanding, more patient, more loving, and just truly learn how to move through these challenging but also beautiful aspects of being human. So because projection is never true on both sides, it can distort perceptions, cause misunderstandings, and strain our important emotional connections. And this often happens because people haven't taught to recognize their own emotions and their own internal processes and their own internal experiences, and instead blame the other people around them for the way that they're feeling. So understanding projection is really understanding our own experiences and how we can learn to take responsibility of the way that we feel and why we feel that way, instead of being a victim to how everybody else is all the time. Because ultimately you get to choose how you react regardless of what is happening around you. And you cannot force other people to behave in the way that is comfortable for you all the time. And oftentimes we have reactions that are based off of our past experiences rather than a person's true intentions. And if we react in a way that isn't in line with their intentions, we can lose out on positive experiences with them, or we can put ourselves into really hurtful experiences. Either way, projection is harmful in these situations and create misunderstandings and strain yourself and your other connections. So this truly just stems from us refusing to recognize a reaction, behavior, or emotion within ourselves and blaming it or projecting it onto somebody else. So to recognize when you are projecting, here are some little things to look out for. Do you find yourself blaming your partner very often, or do you find yourself being blamed by your partner very often? Remember that every person has a responsibility for their emotions and their reactions. It's always a two-way street in relationships. And of course, things can make us feel bad, but ultimately we are responsible for our reactions. Overreaction is also a really big pointer to the fact that there may be some unresolved feelings from other wounds there. For example, someone making a small infraction and you completely blowing up is probably because that small infraction is reminding you of all of these other experiences that you haven't fully understood or worked through yet. Your beliefs about your partner aren't actually aligning with the reality. For example, if you start feeling like they don't love you, but they have sacrificed 100 things for you already, that is likely that you are projecting your belief that you are not loved enough, which came from, childhood or whatever other experiences, onto them, because they're consistently proving how much you are worth to them. And then it is not a problem for them to fix, but a problem that you have to fix because you are in fact projecting things onto them and thus hurting the relationship. If you have difficulty owning your emotions, this is also a very big sign, as it shows that you are not familiar or haven't practiced feeling and accepting your emotions, which you have to do in order to integrate them along with the challenging experiences that you've had in your life. Once you start recognizing all of these projections, it can feel a little bit challenging, and that's normal, but just remember, literally everybody does it sometimes, and everybody has wounds that they need to work through. It's just a part of life, and it's completely normal to act crazy sometimes. Just be aware of it and try, obviously, to hurt the people you care about less. But know that there is space for your crazy, for your anger, for your emotions. They are all valid and deserve to be seen, loved, and accepted in our world. That is the only way that we are going to learn to live in better harmony with each other and be more real, because those are aspects of life that shouldn't be pushed down and frankly can't be, because they always come out in another way and often stronger if we keep pushing it away. Once you have started to recognize these patterns of projection, you can replace it with other types of behavior that are going to help you more. Before reacting or before acting on your feelings that have been caused by any given situation, choose to self-reflect. Choose to see both sides of the situation. Don't be naive and, discard the fact that someone could be trying to hurt you, because that can happen, but don't assume that that is what's happening 100% and there's no other alternative. Choose to reflect on your past. Choose to reflect on what experiences this reminds you of. Choose to reflect on how you want to react, but maybe the fact that this person isn't actually the idea that you're projecting onto them right now because you're having an emotional reaction. Just take a second to breathe and open yourself to other possibilities. Practice mindful communication, especially where you clarify what you are feeling, what you are experiencing. Instead of saying, you are this and that, say, I am reacting like this because of my past experience with this, which is triggering this feeling within me. I want to understand what your side of the story is. Start an inviting conversation that is going to be productive instead of letting all of your emotions out on this other person so that you don't have to feel them. Ultimately, what is going to help us make better decisions and feel better isn't just having emotional projections and releasing all of our shame and anger and whatever else onto someone else. It is acknowledging that it is there and having someone else hold us in that and love us still, even with those uncomfortable feelings. A good example of this would be saying, I feel insecure right now, instead of you make me feel insecure. You can identify that, oh, because you did this, I feel insecure. But also realizing the fact that, why do I get the feelings of insecurity from this behavior? Is that actually something I need to keep feeling and holding on to? Maybe I should work on myself so I don't feel as insecure whenever these things happen. Another point is to take emotional ownership, which I was kind of hitting on in the last sentence or so, but to really realize that at the end of the day, you are responsible for your own reactions and your emotions. And that is the only thing that you can control. And so projecting and putting all this blame and responsibility on the other person ultimately isn't going to help you. All you can do is empower yourself, and with that hope that you are empowering your partner or your friend or whoever else to do their own work, but you can't force anybody else to make you feel less uncomfortable. Obviously, you can have discussions about that, but ultimately, you are the one who has the most control over yourself, and trying to control someone else can become very toxic and can become very challenging quite quickly. Fourth point is to develop empathy. See the experience from the other person's perspective. This will help you see that the projection of them as an evil or uncompassionate or stupid person isn't objectively true. Every person has flaws and every person has beautiful aspects to them. And your projections can be really rude and quick and, just not very honest. This works when you're trying to protect yourself, but ultimately, constantly protecting ourselves is going to isolate us. So we want to see the person for their wholeness and understand that even though what they did was hurtful, their intention may not have been to actually hurt you. Maybe they just didn't think it through properly, or maybe they come from a different perspective where they have a bit of trouble empathizing with you. And this is how we, build stronger relationships, as we empathize with each other and we have communication where we choose to learn who we are and accept each other for who we are and love all of that. Another is therapy, counseling, or any other method to really dive into those deep-seated wounds. This could be through self-exploration, shadow work, and just generally becoming more aware and willing to learn about ourselves and to dive into those uncomfortable and hurtful times, not to re-trigger ourselves, but to heal from them and to recognize them. This can be really difficult and can be very challenging, so it is recommended to have proper guidance when you do this, either through a therapist, counselor, or any other support person that has the wisdom and the tools to support you through that discovery. Okay, so to finalize, projection is an aspect that all of us have and are a valid tool, but sometimes it can be super destructive and really hurt the relationships that we have. And it's quite common and easy to do without fully recognizing it. So to become more aware of this is such a beautiful and empowering practice, and also to surround yourself with people who are not afraid to call you out on when you are projecting. This can obviously feel uncomfortable, as it can be a bit uncomfortable to realize when we are being imperfect because we're afraid that we won't be loved if we are imperfect. But the fact is that learning and seeing ourselves from who we are is necessary and empowering, and ultimately will help you create better relationships with those people that you love. Because all of us want beautiful relationships, and they can only arise through being honest and being vulnerable. And to start being honest and vulnerable, we have to stop blaming other people for our emotions all the time and learn that we can, and we will be more powerful by taking personal responsibility and not projecting anymore. With all that being said, I really hope this is a helpful video, and thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you at the next one.